Hi, it's Wednesday. That means it's time for another video edition of Widower Wednesday. I'm Abel Keogh, author of Dating a Widower, and today is the first of a two-part series where we're going to discuss what to do after the widower issues are pretty much resolved. So one of the problems that I see is that women date widowers, and there's all these issues that, again, that are new to them, and they're not quite sure how to deal with, and that's normal and natural. But one of the side effects of that is that people tend to spend a lot of time worrying about the actual widower issues. Is he ready to date again? Is he ready for a relationship? Or the picture something I need to worry about? Or, he wants to visit the cemetery. Should he go or not? And, we have videos that have addressed those subjects. But usually after those issues get resolved, there's other issues, relationship issues, that come up, and people get kind of hooked on those widower issues that they overlook other important issues. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about other issues you need to look at, ideally while you're trying to resolve these widower issues. But at the same time, if need to get these widower issues out of the way, okay, great, you decide that he's ready for a relationship, a serious relationship, ready to start a new chapter of his life with you. You need to kind of take it to the next level and decide for yourself, you know, is this somebody that I can actually live with? Now that we've resolved that, hey, he's ready to move on, he's ready to start a new chapter, is this someone that I can actually spend the rest of my life with? And not just because he's ready to move on from being a widower, but does he have similar standards and values and stuff? So, you need to look at the bigger picture here. But the key is, in order to get these things down, is that you need to know yourself very well. If you don't know yourself very well, take some time when I discuss these different issues. So maybe just take some time, think about it, and decide: are there deal breakers here? What's really important in a relationship when it comes to these issues, and decide what you can and can't live with. And so really be serious about it. When it comes to, we're going to talk of 3 of the 6 issues today. The other 3 will come in part 2 of this video. But really, take a hard look at these 3 issues that I'm going to talk about today, and take a hard look at your widower and decide for yourself: is this someone, assuming that they don't change, someone that I can actually live with for the rest of my life? And keep in mind that and I think it's really important to be honest. I think a lot of times we want relationships to work. We want them to work really bad because we see so much potential in the person, or the person is a great person in a lot of ways. But we tend to overlook red flags and other issues that this person has some problems, and I've got to decide whether or not I can actually live with them. So really, the purpose of this is to really talk about some of these issues, and hopefully if you have questions, you can do a self-assessment. Now, there's 6 things overall that I'm going to be talking about. 3 of them in this video, and the other 3 will come in part 2. And the key I've learned is that you try to find someone that matches up in at least 5 of the 6 areas. Usually, you can have one area that maybe kind of slides, or maybe you're not a perfect fit in, and you can kind of live with that. Ideally, you go for 6, but if you can get 5 of the 6, honestly, you can probably live with each other and have a great marriage and stuff like that. If you want a little personal insight to this, Marathon Girl and I, Julie, we are a perfect 6 for 6 match. My late wife and I were a 5 for 6 match. We matched up in 5 of the 6 areas, and when I get to that one area where the late wife and I weren't a match, I'll discuss it and talk about it a little bit. But Julie and I are a 6 for 6, and I really think that the reason we've been married for, I think 18 years now. Oh, no, not 18 years. The reason we've been married for as long as we have is 16 years. 16, 15 years. Jeez, she's going to kill me. Don't watch this, Julie. We've been married a long time, and the reason is not only, yes, part of it is, yes, I was able to move on and start a new chapter in my life with Julie, and that got us going. But we couldn't have stayed married if we weren't a match in at least 5 of these 6 areas. So I'm going to talk about them. Decide for yourself whether or not your widower has issues that you can live with or not. So without further ado, let's get to the very first issue, and that is what is called values or standards. So everyone has religious, moral, spiritual, or philosophical beliefs that guide their lives, and yes, everyone has them. Even if you say you don't believe in a higher power or anything like that, you believe in something, right? You have some kind of guiding principles in your life. Everybody has them. So what you need to decide is, how important is it for your future spouse or partner this widower that you're dating to have similar values of you? Can you live? And if it's not important, can you live with someone that has somewhat different values or even radically different values? So some questions maybe to ask yourself is, how important is it that the widower has similar religious or spiritual beliefs as you do? Is it a big deal that maybe he is part of a different faith, or maybe has no faith at all? Is that, if you're a religious person, is that a big deal? Um, if you're on the other side of the coin, if you don't really, have any major religious beliefs and your widower does, how are you going to feel if that's the case? Maybe, is it going to be a big deal if you have kids together or you're blending a family? How do you want those kids to be raised as far as these values and standards go? Again, I'm not providing the answer for you here, other than it's important for you to decide what can you live with and what can you not live with. And this is where this is where you do an evaluation, say, look, this is what I believe in. Here's things that are important to me. You know, here's what the widower believes. Is this a deal breaker? Is this something I can live with? Ask yourself, how do you feel about things like drinking and smoking, gambling? What if, viewing pornography, drug use? There's little kind of behavioral issues that sometimes go along with those values or standards that you have. And I think, that again, I think it's possible for a relationship to work if you don't. But I would also say that probably out of all these ones, out of all these six that I'm going to list, this is probably the biggest one. If you're going to have somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with, really, how important is it that they, again, maybe not the same, maybe not exactly the same, but do they have similar beliefs or similar, uh, a similar guiding principle in their life? Again, I can't answer that, whether or not it's important for you, but this is where you do the self-evaluation. And then, the other thing is if you don't know what the widower's values or standards are, take some time and get to know them. Ask them questions. This is an important thing, this isn't something you want to find out after you're married. This is something you want to find out now. So again, go through what are the value standards that are important to you, what are the values and standards that are important to the a widower, and then ask yourself, is it a deal breaker for you if they're different? Or do you really want them to be the same? For Marathon Girl and me, they're pretty much identical. Slight variations here and there, but we're 99 out of 100 on that. And that was something, by the way, for both of us that was important. We wanted someone that had these same values and standards. I think it would have probably been a deal breaker for either of us if that person hadn't met those standards. Okay, so that's the first one, value standards. The second one is probably what it's kind of a big category here, but maybe I'm going to call it lifestyle issues. So, let me give you an example. So it's basically what do they like to do for recreational or free time activity? What's their lifestyle like? So, for example, Marathon Girl and I, we share the love of running, we share a love of book, we share a love of hiking and camping, and we bonded and we bond over those. For those who have read my memoir, Room for Two, really a lot of the relationship growth that Julie and I had was when we were dating. Was she would go running every morning. She was training for a marathon, and I would go running with her every morning. And I was a runner. I wasn't necessarily training for a marathon, and I wasn't necessarily as serious a runner as she was. But I was at her door at 5 o'clock every morning, and I was running whatever her training schedule was, even if that meant, the first, after a mile or two, she was leaving me in the dust, and I was just kind of doing my best to keep out, or just to keep up with her. But we have a love of things that we like to do together. We kind of have an active lifestyle, and even with the 7 kids that we have now, it's a very active lifestyle that we have. So we kind of have these things that we can kind of bond over. Recently, like for example, this morning we went running together. We took 3 of our kids with us, but we went running together. A few weeks ago, we went camping in the La Salle Mountains outside of Moab, Utah. We took the kids with us. We can talk about, my guess is, probably tonight when we're in bed, and hopefully if we're awake enough to read, I can sit down with her. I'll ask her what she's reading, or she'll ask what I'm reading. There's just kind of things that we bond over. Now, that doesn't mean we bond over everything, or we have activities that the other person doesn't care about. For example, I love to write. Obviously, I've written books. I love to spend some time writing. Marathon Girl doesn't care about that. Marathon Girl loves to ride bikes. That's something she's gotten into lately. In fact, the other day she went like a 50-mile bike ride. Don't have the patience, don't have the energy, don't want to sit. I don't want to sit down that long. So again, it's not. Is it a perfect match where we're doing everything together? No, but we have these things that we kind of bond over, and we can spend time with, and we kind of have the same kind of lifestyle. And again, this is important to us. I think we both have a hard time if one of us was a couch potato and one of us was wanted to go running. The fact that we're at least somewhat active, or we can at least support each other. I guess that's the other thing. Again, we have a bunch of kids. We love our kids, but sometimes it's hard to do some of these activities with all the kids that we have. So it might mean that instead of running together, we take turns watching the kids. As this was especially true when they were younger, but sometimes it meant that, hey, go out and get your run done. I'll watch the kids for an hour. When you come back, we can switch off and do things like that. So we're supportive. We understand things like that running and riding are important. She understands that, for example, making this video is important to me. So right now she's outside making sure the kids are playing and having fun while I spend the 10, 15 minutes recording this video. So anyway, so you want to look at your widower and say, does he have a similar lifestyle that I have? I know of a woman married to a widower, and they've been married for several years. They got a good relationship, but the one grading point on the relationship is she's a workaholic. She gets out and she wants to go out and be active and do things. And he's kind of a couch potato. Do they have a good marriage? From what I understand, yeah, they have a good marriage. But this is the one kind of point of friction, you could say, in their relationship, is that they don't match up here. Now, maybe it's not important for you. Maybe you don't care if he's active or a couch potato, and you can work things out. But again, this is where you do your self-assessment. Say, what kind of lifestyle is important for me, as far as what are we doing with time when maybe we're not at work. Are there things that we can do together that we can bond over outside of widower issues or talking about that? Is there something we can do together and build memories together and do things together? Some people like to travel a lot. I've seen lots of stories of people, hey, we took this vacation together. It was to a place that we never went to. We both like to travel, bond time. Hey, we are closer together because of that. And again, everybody's different. Everybody has their own thing, but you need to decide for yourself, well, these are the recreational and free time activities and lifestyle things that are important to me. This is what's important to my widower. How similar are they? Are they the same? Are they different? Are they somewhat, is there at least one thing that we can kind of bond over? And again, decide, is this important for you? If it's not, that's fine. But just keep in mind that when you decide, on any of these issues, if you decide that it's not important, I guess, could you stand it as a source of friction? Again, that's not something I can answer. That's something you've got to answer for yourself. And that's why you've got to do your self-evaluation and self-assessment. And really look at the thing honestly and objectively. If you're, for example, I don't know, whatever, you like to run triathlons and your spouse doesn't, at the very least, is he going to be supportive of it? Is the widower going to be supportive? Or if it's vice versa, if he likes to, spend all this time training for triathlons and you don't want anything to do with that, that's fine. Can you, are you willing to support him or her in these activities? So again, decide what's important for you, decide understand what the widower's lifestyle philosophy is, and take it from there and decide if you can live with. All right, third thing we're going to talk about here is money. Money or lack thereof, huge stressor in the relationship. So questions to ask yourself is, how do you feel about consumer debt? Or, if you're maybe younger, school debt, how do you feel about paying bills on time, saving money, having a budget? Are those important to you? Is it important that you have joint or separate checking accounts? And then does the widower feel the same way? Does this widower come with significant amount of debts or other obligations? Again, is this something? Does he spend money? Does he save? Is he a miser? There's a whole spectrum here, and again, you don't necessarily have to be on the exact same page here. I say again, Marathon Girl and I, we are pretty close to the same page as far as paying bills on time, staying out of debt. Maybe I'm a little more, not quite as, I'm probably a little more open in that regard than she is, but we're in the same ballpark, right? We're in the same area. We're working towards the same goals. We have similar values in the area. So that's not to say money hasn't been a stress in our life. When we were first married, neither of us earned much money, so we didn't have much. There's been times where after Marathon Girl decided to stay home and, because we had a lot of kids and raise them, where I was unemployed. And so it's not the money hasn't been a stress factor, but we have similar values and ideas regarding it. I know, like when I was unemployed for a couple weeks several years ago, we were able to sit down together and say, well, this is what we've budgeted, this is what we've saved, let's try to work through this until I can find a job. Thankfully, I was able to find a job rather quickly, and that stress went away. But again, it's like we had the same values and goals. So when a hard time came, yes, there was stress, but the stress wasn't because we had different ideas or ways to how to approach the job loss. It was we were on the same, basically, the same path. We were able to agree to a really tight budget until work was found, and things worked out that way. So again, are you basically on the same path? And if not, that's fine. A lot of people have different checking accounts. They're responsible for different things, and if that works for you, that's great. But are you on the same page with that? And then what's going to happen if, for some reason, a source of income dries up or something like that? So just it's something to keep in mind, and again, sit down and decide for yourself. Now, one of the issues along these same lines, I see this a lot, especially if the widower and the woman that's dating him are older. A lot of times, the widower or even the person dating him will have kids, and it comes down to, well, what he wants to leave the house to the kids, or there's different assets he wants to leave to the kids, and that's fine. Or maybe you have assets you want to leave to your kids. But I guess along these terms of money, I'm talking about, where are these, what's going to happen after the widower passes on or you pass on with these assets? Are you going to find yourself homeless? I've seen it. I'd hate to. It breaks my heart to say this, but I've seen it several times where a woman has married a guy and a widower, and they're happy and blissful, and then he dies, and the house or his assets or whatever, they go to their kids because his will was never updated, even though he said he was going to do it. And she suddenly finds herself homeless. The kids are like, get out of the house. You don't belong here. Totally breaks my heart that people are treated that way and that things weren't done. But again, this is something to think about. How will you be taken care of if the widower passes on? And maybe if you're younger, that's not such a big deal, but I've seen it a lot in older relationships, where people have certain benefits or certain income streams, or they have older kids, adult kids, and maybe the kids think you're a gold digger. I don't know. There's 100 different things that go on here. I actually have a separate video about it. If you go look for problems with widowers' adult children on YouTube, I have a video about this specific issue. But just in a high level, 30,000 feet view, is it a big issue for you? Do you have, are these going to be issues if you marry somebody? And again, I think a lot of these issues can be resolved, especially about what's going to happen after the widower dies. These issues can be resolved. But my advice in a nutshell is, don't marry someone if there's a question about, am I going to be homeless or something like that if the widower passes on? My personal philosophy is, and it's my wife's as well, is that it's that once we're married, it's our assets, that they belong to each other. Maybe if the kids are left with something, that's great, but really they're our assets. And if I was to pass on or she was to pass on, and pray that doesn't happen anytime soon, but if it happens, we're not leaving the other person destitute. So that's just our personal philosophy. Everyone has their own. So again, just on this money thing, are you on the same page financially? Do you know what assets are going to be taken care of? And again, there's nothing wrong if the widower wants to leave assets to his kids, but what are you going to do? What's your is there a plan for you, or a plan for you to maybe stay in the house or something? Anyway, gone on too long about this. So I'll stop. Part 2, I'll post that next week. It'll talk about 3 more issues. But again, just a quick summary of the issues here. Do you have similar value standards? What kind of lifestyle you have? What kind of lifestyle does a widower have in money? Take some time, do a self-assessment. If you don't know where the widower stands on some of these issues, my advice is to find out before you get too serious. I'm Abel Keogh, author of Dating a Widower. We'll see you next Wednesday.